Let's start talking. Hey y'all, I am Domari Dickinson. I am actually hosting this community space, and all that means is I'm the one responsible for hitting record. That's really my job, right? This is a space for you all to come in and share your successes, additional questions, continue conversations that kind of started in other sessions. And you're like, wait, I need to talk to this person some more. Struggles that you're having in your SDE, on your SDE journey, anything really. We just wanted to have a hold space for folks to talk and to chat and to work through some things. This is being recorded, so if you don't want your face on camera, go ahead and turn your camera off. But this is not like my show. It's not my stage. There aren't planned questions for y'all to answer. It's really what's coming up for you. I am going to be taking notes as I am representing ASDE here, because if there are things that people are sharing out as needs, I want to be able to capture that and take it back to our team to see if there's something that we can do as an organization to help the folks who are, you know, out here doing the work. So yay. Hey, Kate, thanks, boo. So yeah, y'all, this is your show. This is for you. How are you feeling? What's going on? What you want to talk about? I'm muting myself because I want to listen.
Okay, I will start since it's still fresh on my mind. Hi, everybody. So the last session that I went to was the PTA. I don't remember exactly what it was called, but it was about the restoration school and about like restorative justice with parent circles and within the school as well, with the kids in the school. And so my question was, I love the idea of having kind of restorative justice parent circles for conflict resolution within kind of unschooling SDE settings, or even inviting like the larger community to take part in that kind of learning. But I'm struggling in finding resources that deal with restorative justice circles within for a younger kind of, not entirely away from like the abolition crowd of it, but kind of narrowing it down for more younger kids and their parents, if that makes sense. So I'm just wondering if anybody, and I got a few resources from some of y'all in the other chat, but just wondering if anybody else has any ideas.
Thanks for bringing that back up.
Mm-hmm.
I will say that even when I was working in public schools who were doing restorative justice, there wasn't a lot of support for the parents. So there was that disconnect between what the kids were hearing in school and then what they'd have to do, that like code switching between home and between school. So I'm interested to know if that has shifted, if the folks who are doing these restorative justice trainings in schools are also doing the parent component to really help the parents understand what this looks like, and how that translates for younger people. So if anyone has any resources, feel free to unmute and jump in, or to drop those in the chat. Anna Maria, I am writing that down because that's something personally that if we can't find anyone, I would love to work on that with you, because I think it's a need for a lot of these spaces.
Hi, I'm going to jump in for a sec with that question. My kid is, can you all hear me? Okay, good. My kid is 25, and so back when they were young and in school, I noticed that there was a tremendous lack of consciousness on how to deal with kids' conflicts and things like that. And there were no resources back then in the early 2000s, and so I became chair of the school council and volunteered in school all the time and got to know all the admin, and actually did what I could to create systems in the school and get the teachers on board and get the admin on board. And it was a huge process, and I don't know if any of that stuff's still being used in that school, but it certainly would be wonderful for to have something that, I'm sure there's got to be something out there, right? But it would be wonderful to have something, especially something that's got a social justice understanding, got a understanding of the different effects of marginalization, like kids who have different marginalizations, and to understand how that impacts this kind of work as well. I think it'd be wonderful to create something like that that could be put into schools. But then there's also the mindset for the schools to actually embrace that kind of work with kids, because the punitive model is still so strong in our collective consciousness.
Thank you for sharing. And I'm a little scared now because I'm seeing your background. It's a lot of scary things going on back there.
Yes, it's
I'm
30.
learning something new about you every day.
Yes, I love it. It's 30 years of martial arts. So I've got like martial art weapons all over the house.
Oh, I love it. I love it.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Crystal, I've seen it abused in a lot of spaces, but I have actually seen it used well with adults, but it was with the adults who were training to do these things in the schools. So I think it's, again, that what Vivek was saying, that mindset that it takes, you have to really shift how you think about conflict, how you think about justice, how you think about young people in order to really do that. And I feel like the folks in this space, we're doing that, but out there, I'm not sure. I don't know when they'll be ready for it. So yay, Anne Maria, we got some work to do. Who else? What else is coming up for you all? What other questions, needs, wins would you like to share?
Hi, my name's Juliet. I'm in Brazil right now, and there's lots of family around, so hopefully not too noisy. I've been putting this in the chat in the group. I also come from like a public school, charter school background. And the thing I keep noticing about a lot of SDE spaces is the real struggle people are having with making spaces that are sustainable, but that are also accessible and sliding scale. And for me, it's like, I understand a lot of people are like, the system isn't broken, it was built this way, and I need to like extract myself from the system. And I totally respect that. But since it's not an option for a lot of people, I want to engage in more activism around making things like even slightly more progressive schooling options, like even if it's not full-blown preschool. And I am curious if anyone knows like people I can follow who are working on this problem. Like, I don't even know where to start. I started going to like my community board meetings, but it's all like zoning buildings. And I'm like, who do I need to talk to complain about testing in schools? Like, who's talking about this? Who's doing it in the US? If anybody knows a person that I could follow or a book I can read, I would really appreciate it.
Juliet, I'm gonna speak poorly in response to your question because my thoughts are forming as they come out of my mouth. I just want to share that a couple of months ago, I attended an abolition workshop that included the topic of abolishing schools as they exist as an extension of, the systems of policing and the prison industrial complex. And something that was really interesting to me that came up in that discussion is that like you, I have often wished and thought like, maybe we can just make this system that's accessible to most people a little bit better. Maybe we can make it a little less harmful. And exactly as you mentioned, the system is existing exactly as it was built, and we can't reform institutions that are exactly acting exactly as they were intended to. We actually can't reform them. We have to, the idea was that we have to break them and dismantle them and create something separate. So my background is also in public education. That experience radicalized me. That's why I'm doing what I'm doing now. And so my choice was to create a different system outside of the existing system. I realize my response is likely not helpful, but that's been part of my learning journey, is realizing that I was not able to affect change within the system because that's not what the system wants, and that's not what it's designed to do. It's not designed to show up for kids.
Yeah, if I may jump on that bandwagon for a moment, it's something that I've thought about for many years. I'm also a certified public school teacher who's never used his certification. And I agree with what Sarah said, that the conventional schooling system was created to support capitalism. And ultimately, in my opinion, education is a political act. And if you believe in self-directed education, ultimately, in my opinion, which is definitely one that has been challenged by many people, you are making a political statement when you are using the methodology of self-directed education, and that it is in direct conflict and contrast to conventional schooling, and therefore there's no way to reform the public school system. And by that, I very specifically mean public schooling, not public education. So the compulsory, non-self-directed, authoritative, authoritarian, I always mix those two words up, system cannot be reformed. It needs to be abolished. It needs to be replaced. And that public education, I do support in that education should be free and open and accessible to everyone. But that means creating a new system, creating models that are sustainable. And so I'm a single parent of 2 children. I work 3 jobs. My children are self-directed. I had to change my entire life around to make it so that that could happen, which ended up meaning I created my own model with flying squads, which was as little amount of money needed to be able to sustain a system so that I could, and to be working with my own kids so that they could be in a self-directed environment. So I think that the answer really is just finding creative ways to work within a capitalistic system. So I'll leave it at that. Thanks.
I just want to share too. There are a few things floating around. I'm going to try and make sense of it. But when we first started on our unschooling journey, I was very hesitant of community because I was really trying to hear my own voice. And I think, yeah, I have folks in here that I share community with in various circles. So they've probably heard me say this. And we're kind of emerging from that. And I'm loving where community has emerged as I feel like I can hear myself and my young ones, and our family and the way we work in community in an intimate way. And the last session I was just a part of, the PTA, was very evocative to me because I've always been really hesitant of any kind of system that thinks they're part of the solution because I was just really curious to hear how these programs that are put together, how they work, especially with considering parent as part of the community. Because to be honest with you, with unschooling, one of the things that's been so aligning for me is we all have a voice. Finally, I feel every one of us is vital. And so I loved that particular session brought to light the parenting, that parents are part of this too. It's all relational. And I guess one of the things that is coming up for me and that I've found over and over again is whenever I feel like I'm part of the solution, I'm now pausing, because sometimes me centering my intellectual way of thinking about something And even in these spaces, I love being able to dialogue and share conversation, but this is also an echo chamber here. Because the kid, like our young ones aren't, I just think we have to pause and slow down sometimes when we're solution building, and because it can look like progress but still be oppressive. I have no answer. I'm just saying that's coming up for me too. Even just seeing all of us, our adult faces, plotting how it can, and I don't know how that moves forward in bigger systems, but yeah, I just wanted to share that.
Hi, this is Chavi. I wanted to say something to, not say something to, but the things that I've been thinking about around this, in terms of like building a new kind of society that we need and want, and then like, or a new system that we need that makes sense for our communities or our families versus working within the existing system to try to reform the system. What got me thinking is really sometimes we are all in different places and that each community has different needs. And the thing that comes up for me is, I used to work in nonprofit, and I've always been trained to like meet the people where they're at. And sometimes they are at that place where reforming is where they're at. And that how do we as the communities that are building new systems and the community that's reforming the current system, we work in our own spaces. Then how do we, as like, Joni, you were saying that, we're kind of like in our own bubble here. Then how do we, if we're working towards liberation, how do we work together to literally dismantle this whole thing? Because I think that whether it's reforming, whether it's building new systems, abolishing old ones and dismantling old ones, it's all working towards liberation. Well, we all have the same goal. Then how then do we work together to make that happen, even though we're in different places? Yes, yeah. So, and I wonder if just holding that, meeting each other where we need to be, holding space for where each community needs to be, could work. I don't know if folks have experienced anything like that, but that's just me wondering and being curious. And that's also very part of unschooling is like meeting our children where they need to be, not forcing anything on them as well. It's sort of taking that practice into a community and getting to practice that, meeting each other where we need and respecting each other in those places. That's all I wanted to say. Thanks.
Yeah, I just want to jump in and say, I echo everything that Chavi just said. Like I'm feeling it in my bones. And I think as someone who has lived in these two worlds or continues to kind of like live in these two worlds, or, my children are, we unschool as a family. And also, I still professionally work within the system, right? I don't trust the system can produce the outcomes that I feel would be healthy for my children, which is why we've opted out. But I think what I've been realizing, and in my own personal journey around doing equity and liberation work, is that two things can be real and true simultaneously. And that when we get stuck in binary ways of thinking, because it happens on both sides, right? With very liberal ways of thinking, very conservative ways of thinking. I think where we do the most damage is when each side becomes so extreme that they think, you know, there's only one answer to this thing. There's never one answer to anything, right? There's multiple ways in which we can all exist. And so while I agree the system is designed to do exactly what it's doing, right? Like that's not a failed system. It's working perfectly fine. I also believe that if we are going to begin to create a new type of, you know, educational options, right? Because that's what families need. We need options. Not every family is going to be able to unschool in the way that my family does, because we have supports, right? Like I have an extended family of support. I have people who actually like support our values, and that's huge, right? Emotionally, that's huge for our mental well-being. And not everyone has that in their life. And so we have to be open, I think, on both sides. Folks, those of us that are, you know, building new systems outside of the old system, you know, and the folks that are within the system, like that want to actually do good things, right? And recognize like, this is fucked up, that I don't know sort of how to do this. Like we need both groups to actually come together. And that's what I'm not seeing. And I think that's the part for me that's really frustrating. Because when I'm in spaces, SDE spaces, oftentimes I kind of feel uncomfortable because I'm not against public education, right? Like I'm not going to sign off, you know, in our very conservative state of Connecticut, in the home educational world here is very anti-public school. And oftentimes they will work in cahoots with white suburban middle class, you know, public schools that don't want Black and brown kids to go to their schools, and they will work in cahoots to kind of wash one hand washes the other, whatever the saying is. So that they support their homeschooling, you know, efforts, and then they'll support their racist efforts to not, you know, bus Black and brown kids to white communities. So we need to come together. And I'm interested in learning more about, I know like the Center for Reinventing Public Education has been trying to do this. So they're in the midst of trying to figure out like, how do we like bring together both folks that work in the system and those who've been out of the system creating new systems? Like how do we bring them together to create, you know, new ecosystems of learning? And I know I've been working with them on that, but like it's still very fresh and still very new and still very, you know, we don't know where this is gonna go. But I'm gonna pause there.
Shemay, can you drop the name of that organization in the chat, please, that you just mentioned? Thank you. I was gonna do it, but I didn't catch it fast enough.
I have another question based on conversation in the chat. So the Jefferson County Open School in Colorado has been using IEPs as a way of running since the 1970s to run a somewhat democratic school. So am I getting this right? Like they're, because of IEPs, if the public school can't meet the needs of your child, you have the right to use government funds to then go to a private school. And so they're redirecting kids from public school using the money from the government to their school. But you're saying they're at risk of being closed because they're running it democratically?
Yeah, I assume that question is direct to me since I'm the one that posted that. So I'll answer. Juliet, I'm not an expert on it whatsoever, but I know that first off, in the United States, the laws change state to state, of course. So what's true in Colorado may not be true in another state, but in Colorado, apparently, if you have an IEP, there is no set curriculum, and therefore the school is essentially abusing that by getting everyone to register for an IEP, whether they need one or not, so that then they don't have to have a curriculum and so that they can run. The problem is it's hacking the system. So while it's worked for that particular school for, I think, 40 something years, the issue is that you're still running within a public educational system that doesn't believe in what you're doing. And so if you have a less sympathetic administration that's coming in and reviewing what you're doing, at some point in time, you might get caught. So I think it's a model to observe and look at as a way of maybe getting out, as Sylvie said, for a transitioning community. It might be something to look at, but I don't think that it's a long-term sustaining model for most people in most schools. That's my opinion.
Hi, everyone. I don't know if you can hear me okay. I'm still working up the courage. I haven't shared much about my circumstances, but we just found out I'm pregnant again. So today has been the worst nausea that I've gotten. So bear with me as I'm still trying to gather myself. But, I just wanted to kind of chime in on all these systems that we're still a part of. Being a mental health provider has really shown me a lot of different things, but in my training, I had to abandon my children technically so that I could go survive and understand how to get out of a system of poverty, because I grew up in lower class and my mother didn't really appreciate or understand education. So I had to go, that was my escape. I became, I was chosen to become a mother at such an early age that I made it a mission that I wasn't going to become a statistic. So throughout that mission, I felt very alone as I went through the system and went through the education system that betrayed me, and still had to go back so that I can continue to support my children and be that example for them. And now my 21-year-old, I see the damage that I had done as we were trying to navigate it. So I became a provider to try to understand, and even through my training, community mental health continues to create the pathology that it was extracting me of my gifts and what I was really able to offer these families. So having to choose between the two has kept me in this world of torn. Sorry, they're fighting and screaming in the background. So I usually go into my office. And that was that's been part of the journey. We've been creating a new system, but we've been very isolated in the process. So to hear, hey, what happened? You got it.
Yes, see, you can jump back in when you're ready. We're gonna give her time to be with her young person.
I can't start the video, but he's calm and he's
okay. You can start it
now. He's been asking if he could say hi, but they're just even allowing them to be involved, having to be part of worlds where I had to abide and mask and pretend to be something I wasn't, just so that I could survive and get through. And being presented with new challenges again, and how do I formulate, I have like 1,000 tabs open in my brain right now that I've been trying to figure out how do I express and share myself, and how even mental health has been corrupted throughout all of this, and how we can each decolonize ourselves. I mean, even as a mental health provider, it's a learning every day, it's reteaching yourself that all of our experiences are so unique that when I work with somebody, I feel so honored that in the universe of so many connections, we found each other, and that they believe in themselves to pour back and regenerate what's been taken from them against their will. So it's been worth it, but at the same time, I feel completely burned out. And the lack of support in this field, and at least here and where I'm located in Ventura County, we're all really trapped, at least those that are bilingual, we get trapped in the community of mental health. So being in private practice and being an entrepreneur and being a breadwinner is not heard of. So it's been very challenging to feel like I'm doing the right thing, although I know I am.
Yeah.
And they remind me every day that that I am. And now that I'm going to be a mom again, it's still I'm still trying to make sense of all of it. Although it's the fifth one, is like, I should know what I'm doing. And although I do, they teach me every day. And it's figuring out, okay, maybe this is what I needed to rest, because I've just been going at it to prove what, I want to help, but not at the expense of me and my family. So I now have this little seedling that is reminding me that I need to take care of myself, because culturally speaking, we're so engraved to just work, and we have to prove our worth. And I'm tired of that. I no longer want to prove my worth. I have worth. I was born with worth, just like they have been. And I appreciate the space that you guys have, this framework that we've supported. I've been training in brain spotting. I don't know if you guys have become familiar with that, but I've brought up the concept of self-directed education, because they use a lot of concepts of unlearning and relearning. And I entered a BIPOC space, which was so healing as a clinician who is so isolated. And being white passing, I tend to, when I speak up, they're like, oh, she ain't white. So entering those spaces and having that ability to connect has been so profound. So I just feel pulled in so many different directions, that which one do I select? And they've been my priority, but I'm still a provider. So it's just that, how do I do it?
Yes, thank you for sharing that, Z. And you are not alone in feeling that. Chavi, did you want to jump in?
I was gonna say the same thing. Thank you for sharing. It's I think the oppression on parents is a really huge thing because of capitalism. It's like we're expected to work, but here we are in this space where we're pulled by our work as well as pulled by our, raising our young people, and we do it without support, unfortunately. And I just wanted to say that I also appreciate having community like this as well. And that is very vital to the work that we do as parents.
Yeah, and Shemay mentioned that also, like, I'm doing this with support. Like, I have community. And honestly, over the past 2 years, the community that has supported me on my journey has come from this, like, from these virtual settings. I've met people in real life who have been the people to be like, hey, let's hang out with our kids, or hey, you're sick, I'm going to come get the kids, or hey, can you come watch the kids while I'm going out with. And that has meant so much because I didn't have that before. And I was like, how the hell am I supposed to do this by myself? I don't understand. And then I realized you're not. Like, that is what these oppressive systems have made us believe, that we're supposed to do this by ourselves. And that is a lie. So being able to really connect with these people, and I don't know about y'all, but I feel like when I come to these events, like, this is my safe space, and the people who are here, like, y'all are my people. It's really hard for me to meet people out in the world to bring them into my circle, because I'm like, I don't know if you're safe. I don't know if you think like me. I don't know if I want you around my kids, right? So being able to meet people here and continue those relationships has been the only way that I've been able to do this. So there's like half the people in this room right now, like, I've had conversations with, outside of these spaces, because I've needed something, or they've needed something, or we just needed to, share that together. So I want to encourage you to continue to stay in these spaces. These are your people, right? We are here to help, especially because we know, because we're all doing it too. We're all going through the same things. So that is really the point of this session today, to be able to make that space to say, this is what I'm struggling with. And not that you're going to get a bunch of solutions, but you're going to get those head nods saying, yep, I feel you. I've been there. Like, if you need a shoulder, how can I support you? Right? So thank you so much for sharing.
Thank you for sharing, everyone. And I am not sure if, okay. I just wanted to ask, just as you both share, Z and Domari, like I could very much relate to the struggle of, and I know from this conference, I'm recognizing that my challenge is to have the courage to build the community of support. And then I just also wonder, from those of you who have been in this community and practicing SDE for a longer time, like, because my family, even I have a younger sister who's living with my mom, and she has 2 boys. They're just amazing. But that sort of thinking, oppressive thinking of like controlling the child. And I mean, they have such great free spirits that I just think is amazing when I hear. I mean, they're wild, it's really great to hear them, but oftentimes I hear my mom yelling at them. I hear, just this sense of like, just it makes me cringe when it's like shutting them down or making them feel like they're an issue. It's an issue the way that they are. I don't know how to articulate this, but I just wonder how, if there's any advice or experience that you all have with navigating that, with like being able to. I mean, I know we can't keep them in a bubble, so I just wonder if that's kind of where I'm at. I'm trying to like think about how to support and nurture them. Yes, keeping them in the community, but then also like when they're in a space, where there's people who think differently, who have different values, like how to help them through that. I hope that makes sense.
Can I speak up for a sec? Thank you. So this is a really heartfelt question, and I can hear how deep it's touching you as you're sharing it. I almost choked up and felt the tears coming into my eyes myself as I was hearing your deep emotional response to it. So thank you so much. And like somebody said in the chat, thank you so much for caring about kids so much. And I think that is one thing about being in a community like this that's so profound, is every time I hear somebody feel that way about kids and express that, I feel a little part of my own inner child gets healed a little bit. Even your deep tears affected me, and and my own little inner Vivek. So I really appreciate that depth of caring. And I find I work with parents a lot. It's what I do almost all the time when I'm not parenting. I'm working with parents, and this is something that's so hard. So one thing I think that's really helpful is to let our kids know what the world is like and what people are like and why. Because I know from a young age that my kid was going to be going out into the world. So my kid's like almost 25. And from the big, so 1997 was when she was born. And right from the beginning, we chose to parent non-coercively. So there were never any punishments or consequences or any of that kind of stuff in the house, and everything was done through collaboration. But I knew as soon as she stepped foot out of the house, she was going to, even just going to the store or the playground, she was going to experience all sorts of different mindsets. So I find that for me, one thing that really helps is empowering kids by letting them know the different kinds of mindsets they'll encounter out in the world and why those mindsets exist and why we think differently in our home. And why we treat you this way, but out in the world, people will treat you that way. And here's how you can think about it. And here are some things you can say to yourself. And here are some, and you can, and depends on your kid, right? You can give them something physical as a reminder of their power and a reminder of that they're loved. It could be a mantra, maybe a mantra that they have that they repeat to themselves when they experience that kind of coercion, and also giving them the context to understand the power dynamics in other homes and in other systems. Like when my kid was in kindergarten, I had that conversation with them, and kids can really understand that stuff if we put it in a way that can make sense to them. And then on the other side of it, of course, is when they do experience that, helping them process whatever emotions and feelings they have around it, because for sure they're going to, and helping them express those feelings and helping them feel safe to be able to share them and process them can make a big difference too, so that they're not holding the residue of it after that kind of experience. Because watching, and then the last one is the kids themselves, the other kids in the other home. Dropping empowerment onto them on a regular basis can be really helpful too. Even saying, you know, when I heard Granny saying this to you, the way I thought of it was, I really saw that you were powerful when you did that thing because you were feeling yourself and you were honoring yourself. I loved that kid. I loved it when you did that. I know the other adults didn't see it that way, but I saw it that way. I talk to kids like that all the time. They're like, oh yeah, I was empowered. You're right. And then they like feel that about themselves. And then those kids can also find that, remember those things, because sometimes one empowering word from an adult that really believes in you when you're a kid, especially when all the adults all around us are steeped in adult supremacy, it's a huge thing, you know, to offer them an experience of an adult who isn't steeped in adult supremacy, or at least is regularly fighting the adult supremacy, because I have to regularly fight it, just like I fight my sexism and my homophobia and my racism and all the other isms that I have been indoctrinated with on a daily basis. So I fight that, so kids feel that from me, you know, so that we can be champions for them too. And then finally, the adults in the other home. How can we get through to those adults? You know, that's what my daughter calls the long con. It takes a little longer sometimes to get through to them, but certainly I guess you can either set a boundary if you need to, because that's always a valid option if you need to set some kind of boundary with people. And we can also validate what those people think they're trying to accomplish. Think they're trying to accomplish good values. They think they're trying to accomplish manners. They think they're trying to accomplish respect. So we can validate that they think they're doing that, and then we're also doing that. But here's how we do it with more. And then so there's less that we're trying to tell them they're wrong, and more like here's a different way of looking at achieving the same goal that you have. And that way the adults don't get because those adults will have their inner children get defensive and come up as well. And we don't want to make them defensive if we're trying to get them to change. But for me, my focus is usually on the kids first, and trying to empower the kids in those systems and empower my kid when they enter those systems. So I hope that's helpful.
Yes, it's very helpful. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Y'all are lighting that chat up. I'm like, wait, go, 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 go. It's a good thing we save all this.
Can I just quickly share one quick thing to what you were saying about, you know, empowering young people, even though they're not your own children. One example growing up, and maybe it might be useful for us to try to go back and remember as young people who's been that person for you. And quickly what came up for me was that my aunt, she's always been that, I feel like I call her the voice of reason because my parents don't really listen to me when I have things to say. So it's just remembering the people in my life that that has been on my side. It's just so good to remember that.
Yeah, I have a niece right now who comes to me and is like, look, I know my parents are never going to change. Can you help me navigate this with them? And I'm like, yes. Right. So even if in that other environment, those kids ever don't get change behavior from the adults, they know that there are adults who respect kids. And if you're one of them, that they can bring their concerns to you. And I think that is still really valuable, that at least they have you in their lives to be that person.
Domari, I just want to echo with that, because I mean, essentially that's what we are doing. Can you all hear me? Okay. Because we may not be able to have these conversations from day to day with people that we engage in our lives, but when we come to a space like this, we all have that common thread that allows us to walk out of here a bit stronger, a little more convicted in what our beliefs, and that we're taking the right steps. So, you know, it may not be something that we are able to engage in all the time, but I know for me, like, I'm very thankful for kind of my support group, my therapy group with the ladies that read the book that you helped to put together. And so often the conversations, they weave so much more than just unschooling and deschooling. It's really also just about navigating this life from day to day. And so I think one of the biggest keys is that, you know, we need community, we need people to just kind of buoy us until we're able to float on our own. So thankful for this space, and just encourage all of you to continue to try and find your people and that group that will, you know, take you from place to place.
And y'all, I was on Friday. I can't keep track of days. Friday, I think it was, when Sunjata shared his session. He was talking about it's okay to start small and to be small. It's like we're not saying these groups are like, oh, I've got 100 people in this Facebook group. No, these are like 6 and 7 people who are meeting regularly and really doing life together. For me, it's really 4 of us, you know, that on a regular basis, we're having these conversations, and that is my people, my folks, my support. So it doesn't have to be a big thing. It could be, I walk out of this event with one person that I'm like, something that you said in the chat or in the comments or during your session really resonated with me, and I want to connect with you. And that person can just be such a, you know, a help and a light on the journey. Yes, honey, we doing life together. Yesterday, I had a whole breakdown on the phone with one of my SDE friends about sex. And I was just like, oh my God, come on, can we talk about this? And it was, because the deschooling isn't just about learning, right? It's about life. So all of that, once you start unraveling one thing, it leads to another and another and another. And so we hold space for each other to have all of those conversations. And it has been life-saving, literally, literally.
I wanted to vent, just kind of on the same page about advocating for kids and like having that desire to be the person in like a kid's life who they can go to. And I might get a little emotional about this, but I think one of the things that I grieved a lot when I left, I was a public school teacher too for 10 years, is that, wasn't planning on it getting emotional, but is that it took me away from being that adult for a lot of kids. And I guess I feel like one of the things, shit, I was not planning to get like this, sorry. One of the struggles I have with unschooling, because I am unschooling, is that feel like you know, like letting, not that I'm letting other kids down, but like I'm knowing that there are kids in like the public school system that could use an advocate, you know? And I know that there's a lot of teachers who are, and so it's just a hard, I don't know, it's kind of like a grief being in this space where I miss being with more kids because I loved working with kids and I loved the education aspect of it, but I couldn't be in that system either. So it's just a struggle to be like trying to find that, I don't know, that connection. I don't know if that makes sense. I wasn't planning on obviously crying, but yeah, it's just something that's very real for me. Is when I think about all the kids who have come to me in the past for whatever reason and who I just feel like I've abandoned as I've left the school system. So that's all.
So this would have been my 20th year, 2022 would have been my 20th year in the education field, but last year was my year that I said I can't continue to do the work that I'm doing because I don't believe in it. It's not aligned with what I believe now. And I had the same feeling like, but there are all these kids who like, what's going to happen to them? And I had one of my former students, I call him my grandbaby. So it's a child of one of my old students, reached out to me and was like, she's getting ready to have her first baby and she doesn't want them to go to school. And she's like, I don't know how to do this, but I know that you're doing it. So can you help me? And I was just like, this is yes. So I still feel that because I have a lot of grandbabies who are in the schools, but I feel like because I'm vocal about what I'm like the shift that I've made and the way that I'm showing up for kids, that their parents are like, at least I know there's a different way. My kids are still in this system, but I know that out there that there are people who are doing this. And until I can figure out, like what Juliet was saying earlier, like how we get all of the kids, at least they know about it, right? And at least they get to see you and how you're showing up for other kids. Like they know there's another way. And as we're figuring out how to give them access to that, like at least they know. And they always know that they have you.
I wanted to jump in because I know Ana Maria, you started a co-op, and I know when I left, I mean, I cried like a baby, and for years felt a lot of guilt for leaving my kids. And there are waves when I feel that, but I feel it less. And since we had started our physical cooperative, being with not just my kids, other people's children and developing those relationships have, I don't want to say that it replaces, right? But you develop this new, it reignites that love you have for other people's children. And so you're still, I know you're still in the beginnings of developing and forming those relationships. All I can say is, I think what also has helped me with some of my guilt around like, oh my gosh, did I abandon like my community outside of SDE, right? Because there was a lot of shame and guilt as a Boricua, in my community that's mostly Boricua and Black, right? That I abandoned them, those who couldn't leave. And so over the years, maintaining those relationships in different ways just looks different. I think that's all I can say is that I trust that you and your community will, come up with creative and innovative ways in which you all can still connect with other young people outside of your co-op. Like we've had our co-op, we've had our co-op open to other kids who are in school, where we've worked out with local schools, like, hey, we have some kids in your school that are interested in like, this spoon carving class that we're doing with a local artist. Would you be willing to let them join? And we've been able to do that. I mean, most schools won't let us do that, but we have been able to bring in and open our doors to public school kids who are passionate about, woodworking and want to woodwork with their kids. So I just want to share that, hoping that, I know it all sucks, in the beginning and it feels terrible, but I have faith that, you all will figure it out. You'll make those connections.
Hey, can y'all hear me? My internet is really bad. Awesome. Sorry, video isn't working today. Thank you so much, Ana Maria, for sharing that. And I really feel you on that. And the grief is so deep. And also, like, I share a lot of similar grief around just like loved ones and family and friends, like adults in our life that also are no longer aligned with our life that we've had to transition from. And I think going back to the part with about the kids, like, what helps me a lot is to remember to trust in our kids and to trust that our kids are modeling for other kids too, and these future generations are going to be the generations that are going to just completely change shit on a whole other level because of the work we're doing together, but also because they have it within them, like they're wise beyond us. And I think it just helps me to tap into that trust with them and realize that they're watching us all the time. They're listening. They're doing their own work. And so a lot of those kids that maybe you feel would better be supported through unschooling that aren't, through those interactions with your kids, through those interactions with other kids that are changing their dynamics, that understand what equitable relationships are, that are being met with respect and dignity, and their being is being honored every single day. Those kids are going out into the world and interacting with others that will be affected. So thank you for sharing that. And I just want to remind us all, myself included, every day, like, trust our kids.
Sorry, and Ana Maria, thank you so much. You're reminding me of what Adrienne Marie Brown says in Emergent Strategy, that small is all. And these moments that you've had with kids that perhaps you don't interact with any longer, don't diminish the seeds that you planted with them that continue to grow and reverberate beyond the time that you're with them. She says, if you can't see the small, you miss the whole miracle. It is all moments nearly missed, private, impossible to perform, or perfectly acted, context and all. Moments of faith hit the surface and change it, shivering us open. And all those moments that you shared with those kids, they're there.
I just want to reflect a little bit on what I felt so far this weekend. I mean, I know. I'm just wondering, like, how do you guys? Were you guys heavy with emotions? A lot of emotions, because I know I was. And what did y'all do to like decompress and get all of it out? Because I felt like I just yesterday, today, the other day, I'm just like, oh gosh, this whole weekend has just been full of emotions, and each time after each day from Friday to Saturday, and I'm sure today I'll do something, but like I relax for a second and I sit, but then I just like feel it all in my body, all of the energy and everything and the emotions and everything. It's all in my body. And I was just wondering, I said that, what made me think of it, Domari, because I saw you breathing. I saw you taking a breath and I was like, "Ooh, I'm like, are you over there?" I'm like, do you feel when your body's doing some stuff too? You know, like you get a little bit like, it's like so many different emotions. It's excitement, it's like the adrenaline, it's the rush, it's the beauty of the moment of us being together, all the energy, the collective energies of everybody. Anyway, I feel all of it, and I was just wondering how you all decompress and what y'all do. I know I took a bath one night or one day. I relaxed. I did some skating just to kind of like unwind and let some of that stuff out, because it was just so much going on in my thoughts. And but it's all beautiful, wonderful stuff, good stuff.
So Lou, yesterday I went to the park with my son. He rode his bike and I walked around the park for 5.5 miles listening to your podcast is how I decompressed. And it reminded me that the connection can be beyond here and the stories can be beyond here. And as I walked and when I came home and when I cleaned holiday decorations, I had your voice in my ear, I had Tiffany's voice in my ear. And it was like, okay, even beyond this, I can access this beauty and these stories. And that felt really good to me because it didn't feel like it was going to end today. So thank you.
Now I'm going to cry.
I know, right? I wasn't even expecting. I'm over here like, oh my gosh, hold on a second. Wait a minute, Monica. I was not even talking about that. I was just saying like a freaking frack. That is beautiful. And that's what I'm talking about. Like just the overload of like emotions of wonderfulness. I mean, I just think everybody here, like truly, these I don't take this stuff for granted. I think it's quite beautiful that the world can be like this and that we could, just each person just trying to make change in their own little lane and then coming together to just kind of fuel up like, what y'all doing? How you faring? How you faring in the fight? So beautiful, Monica. Yeah, wow. I love that.
I'll quickly share. Yesterday, I realized that I do need to process and decompress too. So I called another person in my community. We exchanged some time where what I realized was that the feelings that came up for me was really similar to how I feel when I leave school, like public, like elementary school, like for the day. It's like I just needed a place to re-land. And there was something about like being all over the place, up in the air, and whatever my thoughts were, it was just felt so nice to have a place to land with someone with attention. And then I was able to, go on with my day again. And with that said, I would love if we can build in process time in these conferences. Like, for example, when we went back to the group, the main room where we had like a minute of silence. I wonder we can do something like that, incorporate that even into sessions for people to just for a minute, just process, have a timer or something. And I think it's so helpful.
I wanted to share, and this is kind of goes along with what Shavi was saying, because I was in a session yesterday with Alex, and I can't remember the name of it, but it was kind of about how we were brainwashed in how the school system, not the school system, how there are some messages that come across when you're in the school system that are kind of, young people don't know anything and the adults always right, those kind of messages. And I had to leave before it ended. And so I don't know if there was processing or not, but throughout the whole session, it was just kind of the feelings that Lou, that you were asking about. It was so much up and down for me because I agreed with everything that was being shared and remembered those, but I have two kids that I'm trying to unschool. You know, they were homeschooled, now we're trying to unschool. And so that's beautiful because I know that they don't have that. But then I also have 2 older kids who were homeschooled and then chose to go into the school system and for high school. And I see some of that stuff every day. And I see reflections of that when they come home, and I see just those messages. And it's so obvious. But then when I ask them, like, don't you want to come back home? And they don't. They choose to be there. They want to be there. And it was, I don't know, I left with a lot of guilt and like, oh my gosh, you know, like I know that these kids are getting these messages and there's not really much I can do about it because they choose to be there. I'm not going to force them to be home. You know, and what do I do about that? Like, I feel like I have a foot in both worlds with 2 in school and 2 not in school, but then didn't get to process that before at the end of the session because I had to leave. And so just reflecting on the importance of processing and getting a moment and just all of that. Those are just my thoughts.
My kid also went to public school by choice, and the choice was always completely theirs. But they made that choice, and you know, part of respecting autonomy is respecting autonomy when it hurts too. And and so my kid, I did what I called school self-defense every single day, where they would come home and we would unwind and unpack and untangle the knots that they acquired during the day. And those messages that you're not good enough, you're not enough in every single possible way in that system. And you know, so we did homework collaboratively. We did all our projects collaboratively. We looked at grades collaboratively. Everything was a family. Basically, school was a family project, and in doing so, it allowed me to have a little bit more influence on how my kid was actually perceiving what they were seeing at school, the context of what they were seeing at school, and really helped it. So when they did receive a consequence or receive some judgment, it touched them far less than many of their peers because they had that foundation of deep self knowledge and deep self-love and self-worth, which is what I focused on more than anything. So whenever homework would come home, it would be, I would look at the homework through an empowerment lens. How much of this do you want to do? What makes sense to you? What feels right to you? What is your goal in doing this? And I'm there for you to achieve that goal. Let's do it together. And so that's something that, you know, I wrote an article about this a couple of years ago because my kid was watching some show on TV, Bob's Burgers, and in it, the kids were being forced to school, and she just forced to go to school. And she just turned to me at one point and said, "Dad, I'm really glad you never forced me to go to school." And that feeling in her as a 20 something year old, you know, she still feels the sense of not having been coerced and how much that means to her as a person and in our relationship, you know. But that constant undoing and untangling of this experience of being in school was a big one. So yeah, I feel you on that one for sure.
Vivek and Kalitha, my daughter chose to go to school this year. She's in the 8th grade, and yeah, it's been really hard. But kind of like Vivek's saying, I don't go all intense like you do. Sounds like you were all in. I ain't got that to do. But what I am doing is I do let her know, you know, I remind her to check in with herself. And by the way, it's really hard. It's really so heart-wrenching to, you know, to have had to take her and put her in school, give her that choice. But I am just reminding her, like, to just pay attention. And like you said, Vivek, you know, these things she's worried about, like getting honor roll. And I'm like, yeah, of course you could achieve getting honor roll. I'm like, but the point is just making sure you understand what you're doing. That's the goal, is understand like how you can apply this to life or what stuff makes sense for where you're going. And just kind of reminding of that and not putting so much emphasis on the grades at all. I'm not putting emphasis at all. For me, I'm like, I don't really care. I just want to know that you're okay. You know, I'm just supporting you as you want to learn. This is the way you want to learn. But it's been really, really, really challenging. So some of the things that you were just saying, like, thank you for that. And Calithia, I feel you. I am with you.
So I'm relatively new to the unschooling, deschooling process. I'm based in Northern Virginia, and I'm originally a New York native. And so I have a 7-year-old child. We've always been public school. That's just what it is. And not necessarily in a socioeconomic space that I could afford private school, but here we are making it happen and making it do what it do. He's currently in Montessori school. And so I guess my question is, being that I'm new to this, and the people that are in my community, most of them have young ones who are younger than my son, or maybe slightly older. And listening to some of the conversations that's come up, I feel like there are older, there are some of you that have been doing this longer. And so one of the big questions that comes up for me, I'm just going to keep it 100, like, what does this look like, for high school? What does this look like beyond, like, normally it'd be like college, like, what does this look like post these years when they're supposed to be in this education system? Like, yeah, he's amazing and great, but like, yeah, you need to be able to sustain and take care of yourself one day. You can't be up in my house for the rest of your life. I mean, we'll be here, but I want you to have something for your own as well. So I'm just interested if anyone can share kind of what your child's life has looked like beyond these traditional, conventional, like, school years.
Well, I'll jump in again for a sec on this one, because my kiddo, as I mentioned before, is almost 25. And all throughout her life, raising her the way that my wife and I did, we were constantly told that she'll never be able to handle a job. She'll never be able to handle dealing with authority. She'll never be able to handle all the situations in life that, people think are so important. But I mean, to some degree, they are important. But what we focused on as parents were less about, is she going to be prepared for a job? But still, we focused on relationship and communication and her relationship with herself and how she dealt with her emotions and all that kind of stuff. And in doing so, when my kid ended up in jobs, and she's had a few different kinds of jobs now, almost immediately she becomes the favorite employee in the place, because she actually responds with empathy. She really knows how to listen. She pays attention to the human needs in the environment. She understands about collaboration and teamwork, like all the things that we were doing all those years that people told us were going to backfire. Actually, I've had that opposite experience. She recently got her first full-time job, and she's very excited about. There you go. Thank you, Renee. I dig that. Nurturing her humanity. Yeah. And recently she got a job in an architect firm, and her manager said to her, "Have you been working in an office for a long time? You seem to know everything about it." And she said, "I've never worked in an office before." He was so surprised. He was like, "How can this be?" And but it really wasn't about the technical details, right? And you're not supposed to get benefits at this work for 6 months, but they liked working with her so much they gave her benefits after 2 months. And so this is the kind of thing that, it's not about being afraid of consequences that makes someone a functioning member of a working team, right? I don't want to work with someone who's always afraid of making a mistake and always afraid that that's not really helpful. But the creative imagination, the problem solving, and the relational tools and the communication tools and the inner relationship with self, these are things for me that I've always, fortunately, even 25 years ago, I had the insight that these were the things that were going to give our kids the strongest foundation when they go out into the world, because I didn't know what the world was going to look like 25 years later, so yeah, that's kind of how my experience with raising kids this way, because when she focuses on something, she knows she cares about it, and she follows through,
I'm just going to jump in on Vivek's point there. and echo that. My children are 22, 21, and 19. And it was a very self-directed education environment. And people were like, you know, we didn't get a lot of criticism because we've lived kind of independently in other areas also, but it was like, well, how are they going to function in the real world? And in terms of like just letting them have a lot of choice and letting them choose what they were studying and all that stuff. And in the real world, they know who they are. It's really interesting to see how they know who they are, and their work ethic. I'm just like, and it's so funny because it wasn't because I made them sit down and like go through and do the schoolwork. It wasn't like, oh, we're going to develop work ethic by making you do schoolwork. It was like work ethic through working together, through being together in activities and contributing to family life. I'm big on that. That's my thing. Like we're a team and we all contribute here. And like, I don't know, it's been delightful to see them as young adults and in their working environments, and really like employers, they work for them and they're like, can you come back? Can you can you stay longer? And then teaching our kids to advocate for themselves and to like, you know, not undersell themselves and to not be taken advantage of in this environment that really takes advantage of young adults in their work environment. Anyways, I could go on and on. That's all I want to say. It's been a delight to see how they've grown into places where they can take on responsibilities and being who they are.
Can I just add something really quickly here? I have 7-year-old twins, so I don't have this lived experience on the parent end, but as a college educator, I could say that, so obviously your results may vary, right? I don't think there's never any single outcome you're going to get from any system, and SDE isn't even a system in that way, so we can't always know. But I think that I'll say that from my experience with students, not so much in terms of a product of unschooling, but for those who were in less traditional spaces, tended to have a real advantage in some of the more elite college spaces, because I had students who came from very like demanding, impressive, expensive schools. But when I would give them a project and they had to like, here's the topic, here's what we're studying, we want to write a research paper that's based on your interest or what's really vibing with you about this topic. They were like deer in headlights, completely freaked out because they did not know how to really, you know, think about the topics in that way and reflect on what they were interested in or what they thought to take away with, or make connections between the topic and what their kind of pre-existing interests were. That was not something a lot of students knew how to do, but the students who were coming from more creative spaces, Montessori, IB, whatever, they had more experience with that. On the flip side though, I think that one would want to make sure that your self-directed education experience helped students understand about like building blocks. And I think there's a way you could argue that SDE could do a better job of that, because in formal structures, sometimes they're laying out for you the prereqs. You have to do this before that, and they just put it on a list, but you don't really understand why that is. But when you're creating your own project, you may try to start to do it, and then you realize, oh, I lack that ability, so I need to learn to do that first before I can do the next part. So you get more of an intuitive sense of it. Because that, I would say, were the issue for some students, where they have the big vision, but they aren't willing to, they want to do that thing they're interested in, but they aren't interested in doing the things that lead up to knowing how to get the firm foundation. So that could be a problem no matter what your educational experience is like. But I think if you're creating that for a high school student, making sure that you highlight to them that that's what's happening. Like if they are backing away from a project because there's other things they have to learn first, to really highlight how important and worthwhile that is. That's it.
Thank you all for your great, amazing feedback on that. I really appreciate that. Like with one of the things when I looked at the Montessori school that he's now a part of, one of the the director was saying how that was a huge part of why she left like a traditional school and went to this kind of learning space. And she just recounted the engagement for her nephew and how, because of the way that he was raised and his parents like engaged the space of community and caring about humanity, that it allowed him to kind of move and operate in different spaces when he did go into a public high school with more empathy than maybe some of the other adults and leaders did. And because of that, people were endeared to him and came to him as a resource or as like a way of building connections. And, you know, he was in a leadership kind of position simply because of how he engaged with folks. And she said she attributed a lot of that to just the way that the Montessori, in her specific example, school and their mindset and concepts of how they kind of engage with the children, giving them the freedom to create and, you know, be their own people. So thank you all for, you know, the insight and on that. So thank you.
I just want to point out that we have about 10 minutes left and that Alex has dropped some amazing resources in the chat. Some tipping points articles, flying squad videos. There's a lot in there. We are going to be capturing all of these links for you. So if you're missing them, it's okay. We'll get them for you. But I just wanted to point that out in case folks missed it. Any other reflections, questions, concerns, needs that you want to share in the last 10 minutes? The floor is open.
I want to say something. You are the majority of you are from the United States, where you are now in the United States in SDE, which is, comparing to my country, way more accepted, where at least people understand the word. Like people in my country is like, what's that? And when I try to explain, sometimes they go thinking that it's autodidactic way approaching life. I'm self-taught. Not exactly, but yeah, I will accept that you open up in that way. So I just want to highlight that beginners in a country where we're in a culture that is a bit more accepting, we're not so new, it's a fight. But beginners in a country where competition is the norm and not being the first is a lifetime failure, and it's a label that will go with you all your life. People my age, 36, are still asking when they find out that you are from the same town, city, or place as them, they will still ask you what high school you attended. Because that would be like, I'm judging you for something that you did when you were 14. I'm not necessarily asking you what university you studied, but I will find out and I will judge you based on that. So being in communities like this, because I noticed that someone said yesterday in the feedback, maybe the next time will be face-to-face. Yeah, maybe we'll have face-to-face activities, face-to-face moments of getting connected, but the SDE weekend will be online, because some of the people in other parts of the country or of the world cannot attend the face-to-face event. Also, because they are coming from 7,000 kilometers away and 2,000 euros of plane ticket in a very expensive country. So that's not always an option. So I just want to say that online events that some of you are creating, not just the weekend, or online opportunities like podcasts and PDFs and articles and tipping points, they help a lot people that are coming from a totally different world than this one. And for me, like, actually, this is how the SDE weekend born. This is how it was created, because I managed to attend so many events that I said, oh, we should help other people to attend them. Because in quarantine, a lot of people made available their own resources and their own worlds. So suddenly I was not a Romanian. Suddenly I was passionate about SDE and I could join any event. So I want to say thank you for all those who create online content. Not to say that those who prefer face-to-face interaction is not valid. It is valid. It is highly appreciated. But for some people, and especially for me, because I'm speaking in my own name, for me, online events are a blessing and a huge opportunity to learn. So thank you for this.
Just a quick request. I don't know if anyone has resources for SDE that are available in other languages. I'm specifically interested in Spanish, but any other languages I think would be helpful for to broaden access.
Aquila's book will soon be published in Spanish. Also, there are some resources for ALC, Agile Learning Centers. I will make available, we will have for the SD weekend, we will have a folder where we can add resources, not just links with them. And you'll be able to take them from there, and I will add mine there. And in the follow-up, this doesn't mean that you should stop sharing them on chat, please do. In the follow-up phase, we are going to add this link where you can, like, the SD weekend will continue a while after the SD weekend is finished. So you can continue add requests and offerings there, just so you know, because we thought about that also. And I want to announce that some of the ALCs in Europe managed to obtain a huge grant to develop Agile Learning Centers in Europe. So there will be resources in many more languages. Spanish is one of them. Not just ALC, but SD with a focus on ALC.
So before we get kicked out of this room, Sonia, I didn't forget your request for pictures for social media. So I'm going to do a screenshot. If you don't want your picture, your beautiful face, you can turn your camera off, but let the world see you. I'm even going to give you guys a 3, 2, 1 countdown so you can all smile, and it won't be like a picture with your eyes closed and your mouth wide open like Sonia posted to me. Yeah, it's okay though. I still love you.
I have an idea. Those who cannot be who don't want the image can react with something. So
that can work. And I'm gonna do, wait, let's see. I'm actually gonna do two because there's two screens. So one, and you don't know which screen you're on, so just smile both times. 1, 2, 3. Okay, hold on, let me go to our second page, folks. Oh, Janelle, I haven't seen you this whole time. There you are, friend. Okay, and 1, 2, 3. Oh, I love the reactions. Thank y'all. Oh, and some of y'all even turned your camera on for the picture. I saw that, Adam. I appreciate that. Do you want to say hi?
I've been trying not to take up space this weekend.
Oh,
Where is yours?
oh, mine's over here. Vivek, I have to let you know really quickly, when you were telling your story and you were talking about like, yeah, and people tell kids that they can't do this and they can't, Corey immediately ran over and was like, who are you talking to? Like, we don't talk like that in this house. Like,
I love it.
even true. You
I'm
can do
so
whatever
glad.
you want to, as long as you believe. And I was like, he's just giving an example. He doesn't really think that, baby. She was
That's
like, oh,
awesome.
okay.
I love it. I'm so glad that radar is in full effect. That was awesome. Thank you for pointing that out. I really appreciate it. That's amazing. Thank you, young person. You're wonderful. Appreciate you sharing your wisdom.
My name's Corey, by the way.
Thank you, Corey, for sharing your wisdom with me. I feel enriched by it. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yay. All right, we are getting ready to head into break. And then for our last panel, tier of the SDE weekend. Thank you all again. I've got to pull all these resources out of this chat, but I will see you soon for our last panel discussion.